person, but I came home and I took like a really long nap, and then um, I had some other things I wanted to do today too. Like I did my laundry. I was originally going to. I'm taking a summer class right now, and I was gonna start watching the lectures from this week for that. Because I haven't. It's Wednesday right now, and I haven't started my work for my class yet. Um, which is fine because the all of the work for that class is due like each unit is 2 weeks, so we just have work like for each unit. But I noticed that one of my worst habits, or I guess traits, is that I tend to be in like the grind set a lot, and I don't give myself a lot of grace and time to just decompress and relax. And whenever I do give myself that time, I used to struggle with this really bad guilt of sort of like feeling as though my time's wasted, and for that I'm like a lazy person, and that if I want to be successful and have the things that I want, that like I can't afford to waste time and to do things like that. And I think it's kind of interesting the way that I feel that pressure on myself being alleviated, because I woke up from my nap today, and I found myself just being like, it's okay, like I like deserved to like have that time to chill, and it's like just not the end of the world. And I noticed that that was an unfamiliar thing for me to be feeling, and I think it shows that I'm making a lot of progress, which is nice, because I feel like for me right now is one of the more like chill points in my life. Like I always have like a lot of stuff going on. Like I'm um I'm working technically like 2 jobs this summer, so I'm usually working like 6 days a week, and I'm taking like summer classes and stuff like that, and yeah, but I still find myself having a lot more free time than I am used to giving myself. Last semester of school was actually not so bad, but the semester before, I think for one of the first times in my life, really, I started to experience like real serious burnout. Um, because ever since when I was like in high school and stuff, early high school, did I did sports. I ran track, and we'd have like practice every day during that season and like off-season practices. And then I quit track, and I was working the rest of high school, and so I was working every weekend, and I was working a lot during high school, but I I haven't been used to having like a lot of free time in a long time, and so my first year of college was, it was pretty fine. Like obviously the first semester, like my advisor had set me up for like 12 credit hour, like typical, and I was working, it was all good. Next semester was pretty fine too. And then I took a class in the summer, and then that fall, so like this last fall, I was like, because at the time I was a double major. Right now I'm just a psychology major, but at the time I was also majoring in education. So we have to have like a certain number of like field experience hours every semester, and there's like a class that correlates with that. So I was taking 21 credit hours last fall, including, well, not including my field hours that I had to do, and we had to get, typically it would be like, you schools for that job, because I was doing my field experience, I wasn't really able to like go into my job as much, which sucked because it was something. It's a job that I like really enjoy. Um, Plus, then it was just stressful that I had to like deal with all that, and then I'm spending all my time in this school when I like in this other random school, sitting there doing nothing, just observing, when I could be like working. And I was taking a lot of classes, and I had like a heavy workload for like the amount of classes I had too, which kind of sucked. But you know, I'm used to being busy and stuff like that, and like I performed pretty well for the semester, like I made it through. But then like when the moment that winter break hit, I felt this. All my classes were over, and I was just working, and I was barely getting hours at work too. So not only was there like that financial stress, but it was like all of a sudden I've been in go mode for so long, and then all of a sudden it was just like I just fell into like the deepest burnout I had ever experienced, and like the deepest depression, and it was just a weird feeling. Like I I feel like even I mean now, like my mind is always moving like a million miles a minute, and I always am like doing this and doing this and doing this. I'm a very task oriented person, and even now, like I still I work a lot. Like I fill my time a lot. Is what I'm trying to say, and it was really weird to not be doing that, and then because I wasn't doing that, it really affected my self-esteem, because I am just that kind of person that's so, like, hard on myself when it comes to that sort of thing, and so, after that, I've really been working to, not equate my, like, sense of worth to, like, the amount of time that I spend doing quote-unquote important things, and I've really been allowing myself to, like, take, like, time and space to, like, decompress, and so, even though I had set that as a goal, like, obviously it's hard to just get rid of that feeling of, like, guilt or whatever, so I would recognize it, and I would, try to justify, like, because I've never been an irresponsible person, so I've never, you know what I mean? If I really feel as though, I should be allowed to, like, take space, or, like, I deserve some time to chill, logically speaking, there's always gonna be more time for me to do the important things, and not everything needs to be done all at once. And so I've definitely been seeing some improvement in that area, and it's just made me think about how, like, one of the biggest, I think, lessons that I've learned is that, the only way, and it sounds so obvious, but, the only way that you are going to change the things that are making your life not ideal is to really explore what those things are, explore, like, how your feelings come about, and, you have to understand yourself. That's the first step in order to begin to work on those things to actually change your life for the better, because I feel like I spend a lot of time, like, deeply analyzing things about myself, and I'm one of those people where, like, I have, like, psychoanalyzed myself enough to, like, see a behavior in myself, or, like, if something happens and I, like, feel a certain way about it, or I react in a certain way about it, I try to, like, pinpoint where that, like, emotion is coming from, like, what in my past has made me, like, act this way in situations like this, and, understanding the root of those things helps you to say that you're like in control of everything in your life, or that like, obviously that's not the case, but I think that reframing of the mind is so powerful in being a resilient person, because at the end of the day, like, people who like would consider themselves mentally well don't necessarily have to have a better life or be put in better situations than people who aren't well. But it's more about how your mind is structured to take on these situations that's gonna affect your perception of your life. And so, I've just really learned that you have to treat yourself like a friend, and you have to kind of really take the time with yourself to understand yourself really well. And like I said, that sounds like really obvious, because it's like I started coming to this realization when I was like honestly, like just in this past year, and like I have like been in this mind, in this body, in this life for like 19 years. Like, of course I know myself. I've never been anybody else. But the reality of it is that thinking about uncomfortable things is a really hard thing to do. And not only is that hard to do, but it's also incredibly hard to criticize yourself and your own actions, because those are, in my opinion, the two sides of the coin to like really understanding yourself, is to be able to recognize what deeper issue within you causes your reaction to a situation, but at the same time, not using that as an excuse to justify any reaction or action, and being able to hold yourself to high standards and be accountable for the way that you act, and be able to criticize yourself. So I think that it's all about balancing reframing of the mind, giving yourself grace and understanding yourself, with also being able to change your actions or reactions. So it's really, I feel like there's steps to, coming to understand certain things, and I think it's impossible to fix a problem that you don't know is there. So the best thing to initially do is, I think it's really important to, like I said, have time to myself, or have time to yourself. There's a lot of people who, they have all these, vices to not have to sit with that uncomfortable feeling, and, when I was filling all my time, I wasn't really feeling as, I didn't have the time to, like, think enough to get upset. And I think a lot of people think in the same way, so they're constantly keeping themselves busy and avoiding having to, like, sit alone with yourself. But all that happens when you do that is that you begin to not know how to sit with yourself. It's like if spend you meet someone and you never actually spend time, like, talking to them, and, it doesn't matter how long you've known that person for, if you're not actually spending face the consequences of their emotions. And so I have made it a goal of mine to try to not use vices as a tool to avoid emotion, but rather as a tool to like spend quality time with myself. So one of the things I used to do, like I tried like journaling for a while, which obviously is like the most basic way to like begin to understand yourself, is just putting out your thoughts into literal words, structured sentence, so that you can kind of begin to notice patterns in yourself and things like that. Journaling didn't really work for me necessarily, because I would find that I would only journal when I felt like I needed to. So if I was really just not doing well and I felt like I needed to like vent negatively, I would do so in my journal, because I felt as though that was the only space I had to do that. But then I just found that when I'm only conveying my negative affect, my negative like thoughts into this journal, and I'm pouring only negativity into it, I'm only beginning to really understand the negative side of my emotions. And so I didn't feel like holding myself accountable to like journal every day, whether I had a good day or not. That just doesn't seem like necessary for me. I thought about doing a kind of like gratitude journal thing, which like, like things, because I, I've, as I've grown to understand myself, I have grown to realize that I am like a pretty optimistic person in general. Even though, I do experience a lot of strong, like, negative emotion, I think that gratitude is such an underrated tool to reframe how we think about our lives, because, at the end of the day, like, really, like, things could be worse. Like, that's I can have something really horrible happen in my life, and I can be upset about that. I can give myself the space to feel like negatively about that thing, and it's okay to feel bad for yourself and to give yourself, some grace to be like, okay, this is a bad thing that happened and I deserve to feel upset about it, without letting that feeling completely consume you and getting to a point where you just wallow in it, because that's not helpful or healthy in any way. So again, it's another kind of balance thing between I'm allowed to feel negatively about a situation, but at the same time, you have to incorporate some way of positivity. Like, you have to find a silver lining in any situation, and I think to just recognize on a daily basis, like, basic things that, like, you have gratitude towards, it really helps you to see your life in a more positive light. And so I thought about, like, incorporating both of those into how I, like, journal, and doing, like, a, here's how I felt generally today, like, here's some good things that happened, here's some bad things that happened, here's what I wish will is, when I journal, I don't necessarily read it back, and as I'm journaling, it's just kind of like I'm not looking at what I'm writing, so it's just thoughts are going from my head to my hand, and that's it. But when I'm like speaking out loud, my thoughts are going like, out, and then I'm also like hearing myself, so it's really like a circular thing of like, that's why I call it like it feels like a conversation with myself, because it is such a circular thing of like, I'm thinking this, I'm saying this, and I'm also listening to what I'm saying as if I'm listening to like a friend venting to me. And so I think that makes it much easier to objectively, like, or I guess it's impossible to objectively listen to yourself, but it helps to, like, I guess, humanize yourself and realize, like take what you're saying and the way you're conveying your thoughts at face value for exactly how you're saying it. I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense, but it did to me, so we're gonna go with it. But basically, I guess moral of the story, I would say, it's really, really important to make sure that you're comfortable in your headspace. Spending time with yourself and growing familiar with yourself is the best thing you can do for that. Because at the end of the day, if you are uncomfortable with the idea of confronting yourself, it's going to feel like a very scary, daunting task when something bad happened and you don't understand yourself well enough to be able to help the way that you feel about a situation, if that makes sense. And so you have to not only give yourself the space to explore your thoughts, but you also have to curate that space to feel comfortable for you. And so you have to be able to take in information and frame it in a way that makes you feel better about a situation in order to make it more comfortable to think about those things. I kind of like to think of it as like, I spend a lot of time like in my room, so I want to curate my room in a way that makes me feel comfortable in it, because if my bedroom was just full of like white blank walls and I had no remnants of myself, and I had nothing to show that I understand myself as a person, and nothing to represent my character, I'm gonna feel as though this space is not made for me, and I'm gonna feel really uncomfortable having to just sit in that with no remnants of like myself. But when I curate my space to feel like me, and I'm seeing the reflection of the way that I perceive myself, it makes me feel comfortable in the spot, in the space, because I've made it for myself. And so I feel like it's the very similar to the inside of theirs. And sometimes you know that someone just needs someone there for them, and you have to be a part of your own support system. And by doing that, you have an advantage in helping yourself out of tough situations because there is no one that spends as much time with you as you do, and so you have such a huge advantage in understanding who you are. And because of that advantage that you have, the best person who is able to support you and understand you and help you to feel better in any situation is you. So treating yourself like one of your friends is like the best way that I can think of, like, framing it, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be your own friend, and if you're someone who thinks of themselves as someone that they would not care about externally, or you think you are not someone that you would want to be friends with, that's a reflection of how you're presenting your character. And I think that you should be able to be yourself, what you would want to find in others. And that's not to say to like fake it or try to be someone else, but characteristics that you seek in others that make you feel safe around this person are characteristics that you should instill in yourself in order to be the kind of person that you would enjoy being around. And that's, a part of constructing the way that you frame yourself. Because, like, I'm looking around my room, I think about this a lot because I'm, like, someone who, like, has a hard time understanding how other people perceive me because I feel like, I'm perceived differently to people based on, like, my appearance, the way that I present myself in different situations. I feel like my friends who are super close to me perceive me differently than my distant friends who perceive me distantly from, like, my immediate family, who perceive me differently from, like, people who just, like, see me, you know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? It's difficult for me to look at myself objectively and, like, understand what I seem like as a person. But, like, looking around my room, it kind of reminds me that, like, I am, like, I choose to see myself at, like, the way that I perceive myself is ultimately the way that I have, like, curated my space to, like, reflect. And, it feels nice. Like, I look around and everything seems very cohesive, which tells me that, like, I have a pretty good concept of myself and everything, that, like, I can see something and be like, oh, that's so me, you know what I mean? And I have gotten comfortable with the fact that, like, I perceive myself, my mic tripod, I perceive myself in, like, this way, and so I don't know how other people may perceive me, but I know that this is who I am, and this is the way that, my all-encapsulating, like, vibe is this, you know what I mean? And, that's helped me to, like, see myself as, like, another person, because I always do, whenever I'm, like, really, like, close with someone, or I don't even have to be that close with them, but, like, it's things as small as, like, oh, I'll see something and be like, oh, that's so this person, you know what I mean? Finding reflections of the way that I, perceive that person tells me that I have a good understanding of who that person is and how I see them, and so being able to do that with myself, like, seeing them be like, oh, that's so me, like, tells me the same thing. And so I feel like thinking of myself as a person and pause for my emotions is very necessary in a lot of ways. I feel like it's kind of the root of, those things. I guess now that I'm thinking of it, I feel like I wouldn't call it like different steps in a process because I do feel like it's very circular, but I think the basis of being comfortable with like your life is like it starts with having an understanding of yourself, right? When you understand yourself, you can begin to think more positively about situations because you are, you know, you want to help yourself in the same way that you'd want to help a friend. And so, understanding yourself comes with giving yourself grace and giving yourself the space to feel and understanding. And once you give yourself that space to think and to feel, you can start digging into those uncomfortable parts of this is maybe why I feel this way, and this is maybe why, like the cause of why I react in this way when this thing happens, or why I act this way towards people who treat me like this, or things like that. When you start to understand those things, then you can start to, it leads back to, like, giving yourself grace in those situations, because not only not only are you, a real person who deserves to, be someone who you care about, but you also have all of these reasons why act or react in this way, and so that doesn't necessarily make you, completely, flawed. You don't have to consider yourself to be a bad person all the time when you start to understand that some of these things and reasons why you act like this are slightly out of, your conscious decisions, your conscious choice. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's out of your control, which leads to the next part of, like, being able to criticize yourself as a person as well, and not take it as like a personal attack on yourself, but more so of a way to change your actions to more put yourself in more positive situations than negative. And so I feel like all of this leads to, like, restructuring of the mind, like perception of how you, yourself and how you navigate your life, impacts how you, take in external situations and information and stuff like that, and changes in that the way that you're seeing things, the way that you're intaking them, leads to changes in the way that you feel about those situations, and changes in the way that you feel about those situations is going to change the way that you act and react to those situations. And so it's kind of a cycle of all these different changes that are made. And even though it's a cycle, it's kind of like a spiral sort of thing, because even though you seem to be in the same starting spot, the more that you do something, the easier and the easier it gets, and you form habits, and the more reframings that you make, like there's progress to be made, is what I'm trying to say. And so it's like that metaphor of, like, even though you feel as though you're in the same spot, you're really making progress that you can't even see, that's below the surface. So I'm not exactly sure what I initially, like, how I got to this point in the ramble, but I did have, like, somewhat of a plan for what I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I hope that this was, like, a good concept for a video. It's really a long video, but that was the goal. I'll see, I guess, how this does. I don't really tend to see a lot of people make see you soon.